Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Coffee Break Podcast. Today you're joined by your host Jama.
Slim.
Tell me.
Oh, I thought you were gonna go with another.
I'm trying to think.
I'll put you on the
Let me
spot.
rock.
Okay, my bad.
By the end of the episode, maybe something different.
Inshallah.
Give me time.
And today we have a really special guest that I've been wanting on the show for the longest of times, and I finally grew the balls to ask.
It's about time.
Fatima.
Oh,
Welcome.
Welcome. And I want to say something. You're probably one of our biggest supporters, and I'm very grateful. I think you were first 15 followers on Instagram,
Yeah,
and ever since then, liking all our stuff, supporting.
always. Of
So
course.
I'm very appreciative. Inshallah, when we do make it big eventually, I want to
Inshallah.
remember you.
Don't forget me.
Definitely.
I will come back.
Definitely.
You will see. As soon as you're getting your awards, I'm gonna be there in the crowd. If you've blocked me, whatever, I'm gonna be like, hey, remember me.
100%.
The awards, the speech has to include her name.
Oh, you guys are so sweet.
100%.
Because I get it, it's not easy,
Mhm.
but like just coming to the space, if you guys could see how the setup is, phenomenal. Like I said earlier, inshallah, in due time, with patience and with consistency, this will succeed.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Thank you so
Inshallah.
much. That's actually that's so nice to hear from someone.
Mhm.
Thank you for that.
No
100%.
problem.
So I'm really grateful to have you on the show at this time. And to be frank, one of our major criticisms, especially that I received from everybody around me,
Can I
was
say it?
there's no woman. I knew you were going to say
You had the same criticism.
Yeah.
Like, what's
because
going
I
on?
argue with my sister all the time, like, oh, you guys have good points, but there's no perspective of another group of people because
Yeah.
we're all, even though we chill around each other, we're different in a little bit, but
Mhm.
a lot of what we think about is the same. We're
Mhm.
very like-minded, right?
Mm,
So having somebody else who comes from a different perspective,
mm,
it brings light to a lot of the topics that we talked about that we didn't have a side for.
mm,
You know what I mean?
mhm.
So that's why I'm really happy to have you today. So before we get into the topic that I really want to talk about, colorism,
Mm.
what I want to talk about with you is, could you tell the audience a little bit about yourself
Mm.
and a little bit about what you do?
100%. And this is an honor, by the way. So hi, my name is Fatima or Fatumata. I'm originally from West Africa, Senegal. But
Ooh.
to break it down, I was born in the States, moved to Mississauga, Ontario when I was like maybe 2. So for a good amount of my life, I was raised in Canada. But the issue is that during my experience, I never had a sense of like culture or identity. I thought I was Caucasian.
Interesting.
Honestly, whenever it snowed, and this is a memory that I recently thought about, whenever it snowed, I thought my eyes turned blue. I know, it's so strange. But it's like, when I think about it now, that's like maybe it's like self-hate that I never really understood.
Mhm.
It was just that when you're surrounded with people who don't look like you and they're, more acknowledged within spaces or they're more admired by boys at such a young age, it's like, okay, well, I want to be like you. So, raised in Canada, had no idea who I was. I didn't even know what Senegal was, to be quite honest.
Gotcha.
So then in 2010, my grandfather passed away, and that was a very hard time for my mom.
Mhm.
But then it also made us realize that we didn't get the chance to get to know him too well. And then over time, my parents really thought about it and they questioned, is being in Canada beneficial to them?
Mhm.
So in 2010, towards the end of 2010, my parents were like, hey, you're going to go back for like 3 months just for vacation. I was like, okay, we're going to go to Africa. This is fun. Mind you, I didn't know what Senegal was still. So we go back and 3 months turned into 7 years.
Whoa.
Okay.
Wow.
So I was raised in Senegal for the most like important years of my life.
Mhm.
I immersed myself in the culture. I got to know my dean. I just got to learn and love my people so much.
Inshallah.
So that is a huge part of my identity. And that's also why I started New Cook. But yeah, I'm currently back in Canada. I'm completing my master's at York University while also just managing my business.
Mhm.
Mashallah.
We talked about this off screen, but could
Mm.
you get into what you're studying and inshallah what you want to gravitate towards?
100%. Yeah. So I'm currently doing development studies. A lot of people, like I said, don't know what it is, but it just has to do with looking at like social, political, economic issues, but on a global scale.
Yeah.
So these are people who work within the UN, who work within the ICJ, who are representatives of nations and sort of address the issues that are faced on the bottom. So like community level.
Yeah.
And then we introduce that to either the state or internationally. So I envision personally to look into like humanitarian aid. I feel like it's our responsibility as individuals to support each other in the ways that are needed. I don't think things should be too complicated. Like, of course, I would want to change the world and like become, Security General of the UN. But it's like, I feel like a lot of those organizations don't use the power correctly, as we've seen, unfortunately.
Yeah.
There hasn't been a ceasefire called in Palestine because time and time again, US has vetoed that. So it just proves that as an individual, we hold more power than institutions. You just have to find a way to manifest that. So I definitely want to look into like humanitarian work, just supporting communities in the ways that really benefit them. What was the other question? I keep rambling.
No, I was just saying you actually answered it because I wanted to ask what did you want to do with that? But
That's
something that I find I want to give you your flowers with that is because in places like the UN and places of support, there's not a lot of people that look like us, and we start to believe that people that look like us do not have a place in that type of organization, right? So I think it's absolutely amazing that you're trying to make your mark and provide support for the people who actually look like you and I, because I remember growing up when I went to the doctors, what do they all look like?
White.
A certain type of color. I remember going to like different government establishments, and it's all the same type of people, right? And you start thinking that a certain color is associated with a certain level of power that you, myself, or you, and even yourself, like will never be able to hold. So Marshall, I think it's absolutely incredible that you're trying to make a mark and put yourself in places where you can actually be meaningful, So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
So while we're on this topic, I wanted to talk about your incredible business because we on this podcast have a small business owner himself. And I'm so glad to also have another one, which I want to get into what made you want to start your business and what was the idea behind the name, because I was listening to your podcast and apparently it means very dark, right?
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
you the reason why you took that name is because you were trying to take a name that originally may sound bad to the viewers and to put it in a light of this is powerful, this is meaningful, right?
100%.
So could you get into that a little?
Absolutely. So going back to my story, like I said, I lacked that sense of identity. But going back to Senegal, I was just truly, I felt awoken.
Yeah.
And when I came back to Canada, whenever I would tell people I'm West African, they'd assume, oh, Nigeria, Ghana, the big names.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that, of course. But it's like, no, I'm Senegalese and I'm proud of it. But I just wanted to find a way to put my country on the map. And the best way I thought to do that was through a business. So the original idea with Nul Cook, that's the name of the business, was to put Senegal on the map and reintroduce things that my ancestors have been using for generations, but were deemed backwards or just questioned by the West. There's a lot of practices that we do as Africans that are beneficial, and now they're trying to reintroduce it in like a more sustainable light. So I wanted to take that power back. And for example, I formulate natural skincare products. I source my raw materials from Senegalese communities. And then I formulate them and ensure that I'm creating skincare that's not only beneficial, but is also not harsh on the skin. When we think of like the big lotion brands that we have at home, if you read your ingredient list, you should be worried because there's a lot of things. There's a lot of like, if you can't pronounce what you're putting onto your skin, that is a red flag.
Sure.
So through that, I understood that, okay, well, skincare is something I want to focus on. But more importantly, and this is where the idea of the name, so Nul Cook, as you mentioned beautifully, it translates to very dark in our mother tongue, Wolof. And in the Senegalese context, you don't say it positively most of the times.
Yeah.
And the reason behind that is colorism, of course. So it's sad to see that I'm just going to generalize it. The Black community, we deal with colorism to such a deep extent.
Yeah.
Even within Africa. I'm a lighter skinned woman to a certain extent. I'm brown skinned per se. So I don't know the struggles of a darker skinned woman, but I've seen it. And I've seen how I'm perceived in a setting where I'm surrounded by darker skinned people. So that was something that concerned me. And I wanted to take that term and introduce it in a more positive sense, provide it with more of a more positive connotation. So I thought with Nude Cook, as I'm reintroducing products that we've been using for decades, why not associate the term with this business so people can have a positive outlook on their natural skin? Yeah.
That was so beautifully said. No, but I just wanted to say, I do see you because you always have little pop-ups, right? And you're always out and about making sure that your company is known and that you're trying to spread awareness as to the product. And you, to be honest, like before you and I heard about your company, I didn't even know that like these cream companies were bad for me. I just used to go buy them, you know, and I used to apply
it's
them.
accessible, yeah.
It is. I didn't. They're at Walmart. They're at Shoppers Drug Mart.
Yeah.
And you would never assume that like products that are so widely used would be bad for you, you know? So now that you actually, if it wasn't for you, I probably would have known. That's why now I'm talking to my sisters like, yo, what should I put on my skin?
What is this?
Yo, why can't I pronounce this?
No, but true. Think about it. And then another big issue, and I'm assuming none of you guys do this, but skin lightening, for example. This is a huge industry. And obviously when we think about these lotion brands, the reason why mass consumption exists is because of capitalism. So they don't really care about the consumer. They care about your dollar, right? So they're going to put whatever they can in that product to keep the production level costs low. But when you purchase, they get a good amount of return, of course. So when we think of the skin lightening industry, and we can talk this a little bit more later, they oftentimes, and Dove, for example, specifically in Asia, a lot of the products have mercury in it. And that's, that's
Really?
a cancerous ingredient. And if you're using this on a day-to-day basis, like there's just so many health issues behind the main issue of colorism that leads to you actively lightening your skin. And that's something that a lot of people aren't aware of. And if they are aware of it, it's just something that they disregard because for them, the goal is to be lighter. Right. And obviously that stems from like white supremacy. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Hey.
We can talk about whatever.
Okay.
I have a question for you, sister.
Mm-hmm.
So you touched on life in Senegal, right? And I want to focus on that a little bit. You know, you spent 7 years there. You said a little bit of the majority of the formulaic years of your life was there, right? So speak to the kind of the differences in society in a country like Senegal versus Mississauga, where you came back to, and just a little bit of, because I know for people that I meet that are from Africa, for example, right? They seem, the culture there, not necessarily focused on one specific country, but just Africans in general. I feel like society over there has more trust within each other, right? As opposed to life in North America, where things are more capitalistic based and, you know, finances first, right? So speak on to the life and the society in Senegal versus like society in Canada, for example.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. I feel like in Senegal, it's more of that like collective work togetherness.
Right.
In Canada, it's everybody's so isolated. It's me, very individualistic. So growing up in Senegal, you definitely feel that sense of community. And we know that like even within African society, we are very diverse. Like I come from an ethnic group that is known to like be herders or very religious Islamically compared to the griot, for example. The griot basically means the storyteller. So historically, they've been known to learn about people's stories. And now present day, they're more of like the musicians of our society.
Right.
So we are a community, but within that community, there's like sort of these undefined separations due to like caste systems, etc.
Caste system?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
In Senegal? See, that's something I would never have known if I never met somebody from Senegal. That's
Really?
interesting.
Is it
didn't know.
similar for in Somalia?
Well, we have like
Oh.
tribes, right? We have like a
Yeah.
tribal system, but I don't think our government is strong enough to kind of, lead or direct the people to be where they're supposed to be. So there's a lot of like inner conflicts amongst the people.
Yeah, 100%.
Right?
Yeah. But no, it because I also went to like a Senegalese American bilingual school.
Mhm.
So I went to school with a lot of like I went to school with the president's son, for example.
Oh, wow.
And that was,
You were high class?
well, me personally.
Sounds like you're a high class.
No, we're not like up. Mashallah, my dad did what he could, but we're not like up.
Yeah,
But they're up. So like that was another thing. It's like we're collective, but when I go to school, you can see the financial difference and how that presents in people.
Yeah.
Just that level of haughtiness or that level of like humbleness or
Mhm.
vice versa. And then on top of that, like I was speaking about, as a browner skinned woman, where I'm often one of the lightest in a classroom, I've definitely faced lighter skin privilege.
Mhm.
So the basis of colorism, it's a subset of racism. We
Right.
understand that.
Yeah.
Colorism, however, is discrimination or prejudice, but more specific to one's skin tone.
Mhm.
So within the setting, we're all Black. We can agree.
Right.
That's
100%.
clear.
Yeah.
But there's difference in skin tone.
Mhm.
So if somebody comes in and they maybe put us in a line and they distinguish, who's darker, who's lighter, whoever's on the lighter side may be given higher preference or higher respect or opportunities. Does that make sense?
Definitely. Yeah.
Definitely.
So you can see that when I was growing up in Senegal, just how like guys treat you, for example. And it's a sick thing where you're kind of
Conditioned.
yeah, you're conditioned to just accept it
Mhm.
and be like, oh, this is nice. I like to be treated well.
Right.
But then when your counterparts, like my best friend at the time, she was significantly darker skinned than me. We had the same personality.
Yeah.
We were like two of this, literally the same person.
Yeah.
But why is it that she's deemed as like, oh, bizarre, but then a guy proposed to me, for
Okay.
example.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Randomly at school?
I didn't say yes, of course. Yeah, just at school. No, that's
There you
a
go.
whole different- at school. And it's like,
So they get down in Senegal Just at school.
Just a
it was
random?
insane. And my teacher was there. It was so insane. Oh my
Damn.
God. I'll give you the quick breakdown. So I was trying to support him.
Okay.
He came from a very, very religious background and he
Mhm.
had some trouble just like balancing his religion and just like being a teenager.
Right.
And I saw him as a friend, so I would give him advice and such.
Of
And
course.
I guess he didn't see that. He didn't see me the same way. So
Yeah.
one day he proposed to me. But it's like we didn't even get to know each other enough.
Right.
And I'm not saying it's because I'm brown skinned that, he saw me as like the ideal wife. But it is true that when you're looking at I can see a lot of the times when I'm looking on social media and I'm seeing a lot of these Senegalese weddings, it's usually a darker skinned man with a lighter skinned woman.
Yeah.
And that's another issue. When I talk to my darker skinned friends, it's like we are not as desired, and we're seeing it now because marriage isn't on the table.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean? So that's
Right.
another issue. And yeah, it's sad to see, but I felt like it was my duty. I'm not trying to reclaim the word because I don't feel like it's my place. I'm just trying to, through the business, start something, start an initiative that makes people start to question their biases and their prejudice.
Yeah.
So we can now have these discussions within our community and address the root of the issue, which is colorism.
Right.
At the end of the day, we need to hold ourselves responsible. I've experienced the benefit of living in a colorist society, not to the extent of being a mixed race woman with curly hair, of course, but I've seen the benefit. And for me, if I sit down and I'm just like, okay, well, it's working for me, so I don't really care, I think that would be dishonest and that would be wrong of me. So that also ties into why I started the business, because I felt a responsibility of using my privilege to benefit the common good.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Definitely. Yeah. That's very well said.
I was talking to my sister yesterday, and I was telling him in the car, I didn't know the difference between body cream and skin cream. She had to break that down to me. So I thought all that was the same. Like you said, we go to Walmart, we just grab anything and go.
Mhm.
And she
You
was
guys have a skincare routine? No?
I do.
Okay.
I do, yeah.
Silence over there? No?
My sister moved out of my house, so like now I have to kind of wing it. You know what I mean?
Okay, fair enough. You definitely no.
Right.
Yeah?
I try my thing.
Okay,
And
good.
I see what rolls, you know.
I
We're-
I
respect
go.
that.
We're all
I'm balling
clean.
on a budget.
We're all clean. Cleanliness first.
Yeah, exactly.
Simple as that. Uh-huh.
But she was explaining to me, like, I know yours is like body lotion, and that's what your products are.
Yeah, body scrubs.
But we were talking about, I don't know if you know the makeup company Tarte and
Yeah.
their battle with, like, in the media of how they deal with darker skinned women and black women and
Yeah.
people of color in general.
Yeah.
And then she was breaking down to me as well some of the products of hyper
Pigmentation.
pigmentation.
Mm.
How do you feel other products didn't address that and that your product does?
Regarding hyperpigmentation
Mhm.
and just like skincare in general.
Yeah.
So it comes down to the formulation and the ingredients. So like I said, I really want to emphasize taking things that Senegalese communities and West African communities on average have used for generations.
Mhm.
For example, one of the prime ingredients in my products is karité, shea butter.
Mm.
So shea butter for the longest time has been a natural SPF, for example. For Black people, it's a way to prevent like skin cancer, discoloration due to sunlight, for example. So by reintroducing that in products, you're ensuring that not only are you protecting your skin, but the way that I formulate it. Are you guys familiar with the texture of shea butter, for example?
Yeah.
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 It's very harsh and like
Yeah.
heavy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So the way that I formulate it is to appeal to the larger audience. So I make it into a lotion. I wish I brought a sample today. I'm so sorry.
No, it's
It's all good.
okay.
It's all good.
I make it into a lotion so it's easier to lather. It's easier to introduce into your skincare regimen because I know that a lot of people don't like that raw, heavy consistency of shea butter,
For sure.
but you still have the benefits of it,
Mhm.
right? But yeah, I feel like with a lot of those companies, like I said, it's just a question of mass production, capitalism. Let's make the most out of the least
Mhm.
beneficial ingredients because the more benefit you introduce, the higher the cost to produce it, obviously.
Of course.
And then you also mentioned Tarte. So the makeup, I think it's a makeup brand.
Yeah.
A lot of the times regarding the skin tone range that they have with foundation, it's limited. I feel like Rihanna through Fenty Beauty was the first to introduce more than I think 40 sort of skin tones. So that's another issue. It's like you guys only see as far as white to like brown.
Yeah.
How about the darker, beautiful, deeper shades?
Right.
Right. So that's something that's recently come about. I feel like Fenty Beauty was introduced in 2016, 2018 or so. So that's another thing. And the root of that is also colorism. Racism, of course, but mainly colorism because it ties to what? Skin tones.
Right.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
I seen like that lady was a master marketer. She was good at distracting people though. Because I came with, I was listening to a podcast. The lady 9/11. Oh, her husband died. Oh, my sister's like, oh yeah, you see that? Look at this. I was like, oh, this lady's a monster.
No cap. I had a follow-up question for you.
Mm-hmm.
You seem to me, I've only just met you today, but mashallah, you seem like a very careful and caring person, you know? So I want to ask you as a businesswoman, right? Because I'm also a business owner myself, and I understand that to a certain degree there has to be some kind of a cutthroat, decisive, very to the point personality or aspect of personality to be a successful business owner. I want to ask you, where do you get your sense of purpose from? Because as somebody, just like I said, I just met you today, mashallah, you seem like you care very much for the people around you, right? But knowing business, I feel like that there's a fine line between being a successful business person and being a criminal to some degree, because you have to step on some toes, you have to kind of work your way up to the top and kind of jump some steps, right? So how do you kind of balance that, and where do you find your purpose from? Kind of a loaded question.
A criminal? I only heard criminal. That
Oh,
was
sorry.
I'm kidding.
Using it as an example, but
So, okay, the purpose question. I
Mhm.
feel like the purpose definitely stems from I had a conversation with my grandmother when I went back to Senegal recently.
Mhm.
And she was just like really happy about me going to school for my master's because I was contemplating it. And she told me that she got married a bit younger. She never went to school. She was just really happy, and she was like, I wish I could have gone to school. And then I sat and I thought to myself, but by me going to school, I am a part of you. Literally, we share the same DNA. So I'm living my grandmother's dream.
Right.
So that's where the purpose stems from. I feel like if I'm privileged enough to live in Canada, to be granted all these opportunities that my own grandmother yearned for, why not go further than that? So that's why I feel like with the business, of course, there's like the financial aspect. We want to be rich,
Definitely,
to be honest.
definitely. Yeah.
There's also the social activism aspect. I really hope that through the business, through the podcast, I'm able to really trigger something within the minds of the listeners or people who support the brand to be more mindful of their biases, for example, regarding colorism. But at the same time, it's like on a personal note, I don't want to fail the people who introduced me into this world.
Right.
Beyond my parents. For me, it's my grandmother as well. And beyond that. So I feel like, alhamdulillah, I've been blessed. And I really want that to be the base of my drive and passion. And regarding me being a criminal down the line, if I have to step on shoes, God forbid.
God forbid. God forbid.
I feel like I don't have it in me. I'm not going to lie.
Because the only reason I'm asking that is because I find that with success in business, there comes a time where morals get questioned, right? And, just naturally being a moral-driven person, right? You start to ask yourself, hey, do I want to succeed or do I want to continue my passion, right? So I find that there's always going to come a time in business where you kind of have to question your morality. But mashallah, you seem like a very head on the right shoulders type of person to kind of understand right from wrong. And that's really, really special, especially in business, as a woman, as a person of color, wallahi, like that speaks volumes, to be honest with you. So I very much applaud you for that. That's amazing.
I appreciate it. I can give you an example.
Please do.
Recently, I had a situation where I was arguing with Zionists online. I'm not doing that anymore.
Good.
Okay, I'm done. But
that'll be a whole other side business.
Yeah. But one person went on my business page and they commented and they were like, "Don't support this brand. Da, 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 da. She supports Hamas." I'm like, please. Yikes. And I was like, okay, maybe I should delete the comment because I don't want this comment to deter them from purchasing. And I thought to myself, well, I believe in the cause 100%. So I left the comment there and I just responded. And I was like, I believe that my supporters are conscious human beings who can call genocide out for what it is. And yeah, like you're not gonna stop me from receiving business nonetheless. At my recent pop-up, I had the Palestinian bracelet and the kufaya as well. And I was questioning, will this encourage people to donate? Not donate. Would this encourage people to purchase? Will they maybe a little bit more standoffish? But then I thought to myself, I should be really comfortable in believing what I believe in. And that should not prevent me from presenting myself in my truth in every aspect of my life, even through business, even if it means I lose money. I'm not making millions yet to make those like big decisions, for example, but on a small scale, I will be true to myself and what I believe in. I feel like just like through an Islamic perspective, everything is already written. And if you do something with the goodness of your heart and you do something that is pleasing to Allah, inshallah, He'll provide.
Wow.
Couldn't
have said it any better, Allah. Thank you for that.
No problem.
I love this area of entrepreneur because in the past we didn't know until later on who was evil, who was, a certain way. You have a podcast as well. You didn't mention.
Yeah.
How did that come along as well? Because that's a big thing for me now knowing who runs a company and how their personality is.
Yeah.
And how I align with that person and their products thereafter. Yeah. So how'd that come along?
Regarding the podcast, so I started the podcast, I think we were 11 months into our new cook journey. And then I feel like I wasn't holding myself accountable in terms of wanting this to also be like a movement of combating colorism. And because, like I said, I'm a brownish skinned woman, I experience colorism to a certain extent when I'm in like predominantly white or lighter skin circles, but there are people who face it worse than me. So the podcast came about because I really wanted to center voices and the experience of people who experience colorism to a very, difficult degree. So I've had, I think you called me out earlier, three episodes, two.
2 episodes.
There'll be more. There'll be more. I promise.
Well, that's what I was asking because I usually don't care about people's stuff, but
that is so
they're
real.
they're very well done episodes. And every podcast when going in, there's an awkward phase at first. Like we had the awkward phase. Other podcasts have an awkward phase. You guys just jumped in like as a professional.
You guys skipped the awkward phase.
Yeah.
Totally.
Like you knew what you were doing.
We had a year
because
of
it's
that.
true to them. When we have a guest, it's like I tell them off the bat, like, this is your truth. Just speak. I have 2 episodes that I recorded back in November. I will post them, inshallah. I promise. But it's like,
do that as the public.
We're waiting. We're waiting.
okay, no problem. It's coming. But it's just like, just speak your truth. And people love to talk.
For sure.
Just let them talk. Let them. And sometimes it's out of a place of just pain. You don't really get the chance to speak about it without interruption, without judgment. So just allowing that to flow freely, a lot of people like that. So I think that's why we skipped that awkward phase, like you mentioned. But yeah, the podcast was definitely to center voices who experience colorism, but at the same time, educate the people, our listeners. And I hope that that's something that we continue to do, inshallah.
No, like it's known out there. The sisters I needed. Like, I don't know, Digital Sisterhood podcast. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Yes, I am.
They're monsters out there in just the podcast industry.
Yeah.
They're doing very well, and you're needed as well. So we're gonna bring in those comments as well. Just watch out.
Okay.
If you don't start posting.
Okay. I will start posting. I love this.
No, but I'm happy you brought up that topic because I wanted to gravitate towards your podcast.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to jump on the same thing. I absolutely loved it. It was 2 episodes of amazingness. I don't know why there's not more, but I'm not going to say why.
We got 2 episodes on the way, she said. On the way.
I did say that.
Because the reason why I love it is, don't get me wrong, the topic you guys talk about all the time is colorism, right?
Yeah.
And you talk about the different experiences that your guests have, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for the most part, I'm only the only aspect of that I know is of the experience that I go through, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's so interesting hearing it from a perspective of not only another person but a woman, because I to be frank, like I've experienced colorism, but I think the women, especially yourself, like West African or just dark skinned women, like especially in East African world, we go through it in a way where, how should I put it, where there comes challenges with being dark skinned women that opportunities do not present themselves, right?
Yeah.
I'll give you a short story. When I went to Somalia when I was young, I met a cousin of mine, and she was the same age as me. Like she was a dark skinned woman, and I like to perceive myself as a dark skinned man. And we had fun, we chilled, we kicked it up, and then fast forward, I left, I came back to Canada, and then I remember when I was around 20, I got a friend invite on Facebook. And that friend invite was from my cousin. And I was like, oh, it's so cool. It's so good to see you. And then I was looking at her pictures and she doesn't look anything like she did in the past. And to basically what happened is now that her skin is lighter, she presents herself a new way. So then I went to talk to my parents. I'm like, what happened? And then I got an idea as to the type of scrutiny and the type of society that Somalia was, where she was pressured to the point where she felt like she couldn't be a beautiful person unless her skin looked a specific type of way.
Yeah.
And that broke my heart.
Yeah.
That broke my heart. And I remember on your podcast, I think it was at the first episode where you guys kind of broke down the percentages of the countries in Africa that use it the most.
Yeah.
And I think it was Nigeria that uses 75%.
Wow.
And subhanAllah, imagine 75% of people in Nigeria, I'm not sure if it was women or men or just women, they use products to lighten their skin.
It's skin bleach.
Yeah, skin bleacher.
Yeah.
And
So
it's
that's
promoted.
That's prevalent in like most countries in Africa, like especially Somalia, because I can speak on that, where I have a lot of cousins that now they don't look anything like they did in the past. And it's because of a motive that was pushed by the Western world that you have to look a specific way to be beautiful.
Exactly.
You know, so my question to you was, what is your experience with colorism? Your experience with the people around you, and like, how did you combat that growing up as a kid? You know, I know you talked about your experience earlier, but I just want to get into you particularly.
Great question.
I appreciate that question. And yeah, like your story about your cousin, I have at least 100 more stories like that. Like there's so many situations like that, and it's disheartening. And you never want to judge the person,
Of course,
because just to give you like a breakdown of colorism, it stems back from obviously like Western imperialist ideologies and obviously slavery. So we can look at it from like within the American context. If you have a slave owner, and the slave who he then violates and their child, because you are lighter skin, you are now a house slave. So you're granted more privilege. Why? Because you're closer to whiteness. So that's something that's embedded in the African American mind off the bat. We understand that.
yeah.
On the global scale, we can understand that colorism stems from when people are able to reach a certain level of success. You don't have to do work. You don't have to do outside labor that's very harsh. You're not constantly under the sun. So the lighter skinned people were in isolation in their houses, and they'd maintain fairer skin. And then the darker skinned people were oftentimes on the field doing harsher labor that was deemed as less than in society. So that's also psychological, and that carries on, whether it's African context, Asian context, American, etc. So that's where the colorism issue stems from. In Senegal, in my experience, like I said, actually, before I came to Senegal, it's like in Mississauga, you're not desirable. I was also like a chubbier kid. And obviously I'm like the only black girl in my class. Well, I had another, my best friend was also black, but it's like, we were definitely not acknowledged. We were like the friends, but then my male friends would come to me and speak to me about like the other white girls or like the lighter skinned girls that they want to bring to prom or whatever. And it's like, why not me? Interesting. But when I went to Senegal, it's like, oh my God, like, why am I getting so much attention? And like I said, I don't want it to be just about I am browner skin. I feel like I do have a good personality, and I feel like, you know, I'm approachable. But in comparison to, like I said, my best friend, who we literally were the same person, why did she not get the same attention as me? And I found her beautiful, right? So it's a lot of the times I've noticed situations where it's like, maybe the waiter, even in Senegal, treats me a bit nicer, right? Or they engage with me when they come to the table in comparison to my darker skinned friends who are right next to me. So it's white supremacy.
Of course.
White, whatever is in proximity to whiteness is the most ideal, right? That's why we have the idea of like model minority in Canada or around the world, etc. So I wish I had more intel on my own personal experience in Senegal, but like I said, I've benefited from it in a lot of ways. But when I speak to my friends, like my first podcast that I had, Fatima, she's like my older sister basically, and she's darker than me, of course, but she was just explaining how she did use skin brightening products for some time. I think you've heard it. You guys heard it, and that, you know, it makes me sad because I perceive her as like a phenomenal, beautiful woman. And the fact that society, African society, predominantly Black society, made her feel like you're not enough. You're going to have to lighten your skin because maybe you're not getting attention from the boys. That made me sad. And then obviously, like something we talked about is that in every household in Senegal, there's a TV and you're watching the news, you're watching like the comedic shows that we have, whatever it is. And it's like, at least once you will see a skin lightening ad.
Really? On
100%. 100%.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's like, I wrote a paper about this in my last year of my bachelor's degree, and it was about like colorism within popular culture. And we can see that today. You guys know Ice Spice?
Yep.
Yeah.
I love her. But it's like, does she bear talent, or is she easier to look at? Let's be honest. There's a lot of like very talented, successful Black rappers. For example, Flo Milli. I don't know if you guys know her too well.
Yep.
She has bars. She's great.
Mhm.
But she still hasn't reached that status or that level of success as someone like Ice Spice, who's been new on the scene. She's only been famous for a year. And it's because, let's be honest, she's a lighter skinned woman. She has more voluptuous curves, etc. So we all have our biases. Let's just say that.
100%.
And obviously through these conversations, they're uncomfortable, but through these conversations, we acknowledge our biases.
100%. And there was a study that I wanted to talk about with you where I remember seeing, I was taking psychology back in my York during the time where I hated my life. But one of the greatest studies that I remember reading was they put kids, like a lot of different races, into a study where they were presented a white doll and a black doll. And then these kids that don't really know the framework of society yet, they just are fed what they see on media and are just told what their parents are given to them, right? So they were presented the idea of which is the good doll and which is the bad doll. All of the kids said that the white doll was the good doll and the black doll was the bad doll.
Yeah.
And you start to think, at what age do you start to think like that you are being brainwashed to think a specific way that the media is trying to portray to you? You know, where these little kids who are no older than 5 years old are being told that black is bad.
Yeah.
And imagine being a black kid growing up, knowing that from a young age that you're told that your existence is wrong.
Yeah.
That you shouldn't be here, that you shouldn't look the way you look. And then growing up and understanding that it's like every black person has a journey to try to be comfortable in their own skin. I think we all go through that. You know, like I remember going through that being young, where I think it's different with men, where at the beginning, I remember being young, being dark skinned. All the light skinned guys had all the girls. I don't know.
Think so?
Yeah, that's how I felt.
Really?
I felt like all the light skinned guys, it was easier for them to talk to women. And that could have just been my own insecurities, of course. But I growing up, I found out that being dark skinned as a man is a little bit of an advantage. You know, that's what I personally think. But finding out that tall, dark, and handsome wasn't even a black man, but just a white man with
Is
black.
it dark?
I was like, yo, that's the only thing I had to go.
They're not thinking about y'all. I'll be honest.
I'm not even tall. I just had the dark, and the fact that I'm not even dark.
Their spectrum starts from like
I was
Polish,
just like, what do I have?
from like Polish to like Italian. Like, where's Africans?
Not
Exactly.
black people. They're not thinking about us.
So
Interesting.
going to that point, like my experience with colorism, like I like to think in this world, in a way I benefited from it because I tend to get a little bit more looks from women. Personally, for me, I don't know how your example is, but I noticed also in the corporate world, that's where life kind of hit me, where my lighter skin friends who kind of had under 5 interviews and were able to land a job, I had to go through like maybe 10 to 20 to get the same type of success rate, right? And you just sometimes you think like opportunities don't really present themselves when you look a specific way because of how you just naturally are, you know? And I'm sure that's even more prevalent in a black woman, you know? Because I think a black woman is they are the part of the world that are least protected. Like they are people who they don't get the opportunities they need. They don't get the type of respect that they earn, that they should receive. And it's like, that's all coming from a place of Western media trying to tell you that you don't deserve to be who you are, you know?
Exactly.
And mashallah, before I ask you my question, I just want to say, I think it's absolutely amazing what you're doing and always trying to portray like this strong black woman. Because I've always ever had only black women in my life, right? And it's always given me this idea of what black women should be. But seeing it outside of my home, I'm so happy to see even outside it's happening,
Yeah.
you know?
100%.
So my follow-up question to you is, do you think there were opportunities that did not happen because of how you looked?
Mm. For me. Okay, I do want to say I am quite new to like the work field. No, that's not true. I've for example, my first real job was in Canada because in Senegal, like I said, I benefited to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So
My
how old
first
you were when you came back?
17.
Oh,
So yeah, my first
yeah.
job in Canada was when I was 17.
Uh-huh.
Off of my own personal experience, I wouldn't be able to say yes or no to that, to be
Okay.
honest, because it's like I couldn't measure it if I didn't question the person, like a manager or maybe an interviewer, for example.
Mhm.
But you definitely feel like there are instances where you're perceived beyond like your intelligence. No, you're perceived within the limits of how
You-
people see you,
Yeah.
right? So first day of class, they may assume, oh, Black girl, she's probably going to speak with like an African accent.
Mhm.
I've had people come up to me and be like, wow, like, were you raised in Canada? Your accent is so good. I'm like, no, I was raised in Africa and this is where I got my accent from.
Right.
But just like
Stand
Yeah.
on.
have them think about it throughout the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely like instances where I've seen biases and prejudice be placed upon me because it's something that people have seen through media. When we
Yeah.
think of like Medea, for example, Tyler Perry,
Mhm.
this is a Black man playing Black women. I absolutely hate him. But think about that.
Well,
A
I'm not a fan.
Black man playing Black women. If this is a person's first interaction with Blackness or a Black woman, and it's played by a Black man, you're obviously going to think, oh, most Black women are probably like super masculine, like super like
Mhm.
strong and like, you know, and it's
Mhm.
like, why would you do that to us?
Yeah.
That's my question. I always think about that. Why would you do that to us? Or like even Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, I think when I forgot what season it is, but they got rid of like
Season 3.
yeah,
Yeah.
dark skin Aunt Viv,
Mhm.
light skin Aunt Viv. And it's like, why would you do that?
Mm.
Why would you, that's such a big slap in the face. Like we're all so familiar with dark skin Aunt Viv. It just makes sense in terms of like it just made sense with the show. But why would you do that to her?
Yeah.
Not only did we hire somebody, but we also hired somebody who looks like better within societal norms. So like that's a slap in your face as a Black woman. So
And she was a professor. I don't know what the second Aunt Viv was. I don't think they.
Please.
They
thought-
kind
I
of
don't
diminished the
remember her
role
saying.
too. They
Yeah.
made her less of a character in the show
it
after
was,
that.
you know, like I didn't learn anything from her.
Right.
But the dark skin Aunt Viv, her character, the way she portrayed herself, I learned so much from her.
She was a role model.
She was a role model. And it's like, there was a stat that I was reading yesterday. So when we think of like incarceration, for example, so this was a study by Root.
Yeah.
And it proved that lighter skinned women were sentenced 12% less time behind bars than darker skinned women. So this is in the States.
Wow.
So it's their counterpart. So they've done the same deed,
Mhm.
but you're sentenced 12% less
Yeah.
than a darker skinned woman. Why is that? Because it's media. It's when they tell you that Black women are aggressive, when they push these tropes that we're just like demonized.
Mhm.
You're going to see me as a demon if that's all that you've consumed for your entire life.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the saddest part is a lot of that is perpetrated by Black men. Like you said, we're the most disrespected community.
Yeah.
I've seen comment sections on TikTok where it's like, I only date white or light skinned women. And it's like,
Yeah,
okay,
fresh
cool,
and fit.
but that's you. I don't believe in preferences. I feel like even Islamically speaking, like we're told to mesh and mingle.
Mhm.
We're supposed to be willing to connect with everybody within the ummah, regardless of your background.
Mhm.
And I feel like that should be in every context. If you're looking for a spouse and you only put your preference as like white, Caucasian, and you've never experienced anybody else, that's not a preference. You're just being racist. Let's be honest. And it's like, especially when Black men claim that, oh, I only prefer this race because like Black women wear bonnets. Like, what did my bonnet do to you?
I wear bonnets.
I wear bonnets.
I wear bonnets too.
Yeah, but it's like I've seen that. I've
Yeah,
had a friend be like, yeah, I'm probably gonna get married, but not Senegalese. I think I'm gonna go for like maybe like Arab. And I'm like, why? Why do you feel that way? And he was like, I don't know. And I'm like, no, look into that. Like, really try to understand it. You can want to immerse yourself in another culture. That's beautiful. But if you disregard an entire group or color of people and you claim that's preference, there's something wrong.
100%.
Definitely.
There's something wrong.
You know, I have a follow-up question for you, actually. And I want to share a little bit of a short story because we had two very, very great episodes that kind of tie into this conversation. One being about identity and the other one kind of being specifically about colorism.
Yeah.
But I feel like growing up, for me specifically, I had a weird kind of interaction to just race in general.
Yeah.
And I think, well, let me just start by saying, I think social development, there's a lot of nuance to it, right? Not everybody's journey is going to be the same. Mine specifically, like as a kid, maybe in like early grade school, junior school, right? Early 2000s, mid 2000s type of time. I feel like majority of the kids that were popular or had some kind of a social status to them in school were darker skinned. You know, I grew up in like a majority Black centric neighborhood my whole life. And at that time, I felt like my own social development led me to believe that being darker skinned meant that you were more accepted in society, which I came to find out was not how society is actually built, especially in North America, right? Yeah. But which made me question my own identity, or my own race, because I don't really know even today, I really don't know if I can identify myself with somebody as a fairer skinned person or a darker skinned person, you know? So it's kind of hard for me to even just kind of judge myself in that sense.
Yeah.
But leading up to maybe like, once we started working, like teenage years, like high school time, I always had it in my head that the darker skinned you are, the more accepted you'll be around society, just locally, you know, not necessarily looking at it from
within like the Black community.
Right.
Okay. Men
specifically.
Okay.
Men specifically. Yes. Right.
Yeah.
But as I grew up and I got into the corporate world, I started to notice that naturally, that's obviously the opposite, right? And the more fairer skinned you are, the more opportunities and things will happen for you in life, right? But there was a point in which where that kind of really stuck out to me. And when that happened was, I used to work a job in security. We all used to work security. And there was a time in which where you would work these security shifts, but you'd be outside all day, right? So I had an entire summer where 12 hours of the day I was basking in the sun, just enjoying getting my vitamin D, right? And towards the end of that summer, I became really dark skinned, much more darker than I actually was. And a lot of my friends were making fun of me because of that. They're saying, you look burnt.
I never said
I'm not saying you specifically. I'm not saying you.
Looked at me right away.
Why did he look at me?
They're calling me. I'm just saying. I was getting a lot of jokes because of that, right? But it baffled me because I'm thinking to myself, up until then, the darker you are, the better it is for you in life, right? But when I got dark, right, people were starting to clown me. They're starting to make me, and these are Black people, right? These are my friends, right? Not these guys. I'm not trying to single anybody up. Definitely not these guys. Definitely not these guys. Definitely not these guys. No, but it really made me start to question, like, okay, was the way I've been thinking all these years wrong, right? And then as time went on, I started to notice that, hey, the people that were light skinned growing up did have it a little bit easier, you know? In hindsight, I started to think about it. I'm like, oh, maybe the darker skinned people weren't well off. Maybe they were just respected amongst us, you know? I didn't really take in, because we went to a very Black centric high school. Yeah. And Caucasian people were a minority in our school. So we didn't really see the effects of, you know, society in our school, right? So I kind of had it in my head to be a certain way, right? But now growing up, it kind of puts me in a weird position where I don't really, for me, self-identification is kind of hard because I don't really know which side to lean on, you know? This guy always makes the joke that when the camera turns or the lights turn on, I become light skinned, and then when they're off, I'm back to the dark skin community, you know? So
I don't say it like that. I just say you have a lot of light skin attributes.
Yeah, he
called this guy. Earlier you looked at him, now you're
but the thing is, like, my real thing is, like, even when jokes like that happen, I'm thinking to myself, like, am I getting dissed? Am I getting rated right now? Like,
I respect you.
naturally it's kind of it's baffling to even think about, because like you don't really have a sense of like true identity in the Black community. So colorism is like, it's a real thing. And especially since we're sitting here talking to a woman about it, I'm so invested in this conversation, because there, as a guy, naturally we tend to look at each other with what we're capable of or what we can do, right? But I feel like with women it's more of a perceived effort. You know, once you get to know somebody, it's like, oh, what does she look like she can do? Or what do I feel like she can do, based off of how, like, you know, small little interactions and stuff. So I do find that even in our own society, sometimes it can get confusing.
It is confusing.
Right? But as somebody...
It's a spectrum, though.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think that you're a very lucky person, because you got to spend some time in an actual African environment, right? In a country where everybody kind of looks the same to some degree. And you saw the difference in society there and the society here, right? So that kind of helped you kind of build. And that's where it goes back to what I was saying before. Social development is full of nuance, right? So my like own experience kind of led me to believe what I believe now, but your experience was full of different experience, like different people and different like visuals to kind of go off of, right? So like we all kind of led to the same place, but it's like, how do we make this a normalized thing, you know, where we can kind of accept people's different race tones or like skin tones and not have this like backwards way of thinking about it, right? Kind of my question.
Okay. Well,
very loaded. I'm sorry.
If I answer the question, I expect a Nobel Prize, because that would resolve everything.
Right.
But no, this was great. And that's really interesting. I love how you guys are like pitching in and sharing your experience as Black men experiencing colorism or not. And I want to add to that, like, in my opinion, Black men and dark-skinned men and dark-skinned women have two different experiences. I feel like dark-skinned Black men are fetishized, definitely. And obviously Black women are fetishized as well, but darker-skinned women still bear the burden of originally being perceived as like aggressive and just like, you know, there's a lot of underlying issues around that. But when we think of like the tall, dark, and handsome trope, even though they're not speaking about Black men, a lot of people still yearn for that. There's a lot of like bizarre fetishization around that. And we, as Black women, we don't get to bear the benefits of that, if that makes sense. So skin tone is a spectrum, of course. Like I said, I keep saying I'm a brown skin woman. If I say I'm light skin, that's not true. If I'm like light skin, it's not mixed race, but you are closer to whiteness in terms of like your hair texture and your skin color, right? So you're on like maybe this color right here. That's, you know? And then brown skin is, I would say you're brown skin as well. Our skin tone is quite similar. So we can't claim that we're dark skin, because that would be an injustice. If I sit here and I say I'm dark skin, that's not true. I'm disregarding the experience of hundreds of thousands of people who experience colorism worse than me. But then you have the middle ground of brown skin. And it's like you're benefiting in some scenarios, but you're also, you know, susceptible to colorism. So I understand how it's like very nuanced and complex. In regards to your question, I think just having conversations, like, that's why I started the podcast. I want people to be comfortable enough to speak about their truth. But at the same time, I want to be able to educate people. A lot of times people are like, we already have so many issues within the Black community. We don't have to focus on this, whatever. Like, let's try to build generational wealth. But it's like, these issues run too deep. We are mentally unwell. It's true. Like, generational trauma is real. I know people throw that word around, but it's so true. You have your biases. And then if we as young people who eventually will get married and have children one day, what are we going to instill in our children?
Right.
If we don't have these conversations now and educate ourselves and question our biases. And I know you guys were joking about how like, oh, you know, they were questioning like, oh, like I'm you're dark now, you're burnt, you're charcoal. And I've heard those conversations even in Senegal. It's like, oh, ñuul nga de. Ñuul nga de means basically, oh, you're really dark now. And it's like, once we come back from summer in August, it's like everybody's darker and you're going to be questioned about how your skin tone fluctuates. And those are jokes that were said within my space as well. in my environment. So I'm not angry at them because we're children, we're young, we're immature. But even that is a proof of like deep internalized self-hate. What's
Right.
wrong with being darker skin?
Right.
What's wrong?
Nothing.
If God
Absolutely
created this way,
Yeah.
what's wrong with it? We should be comfortable in ourselves. And genuinely, melanin is so rich. I don't know if you guys heard, I don't think it's a conspiracy theory, but a lot of the times when Black people go missing, they claim that it's because they're harvesting like melanin.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Melanin,
What?
there's a price on melanin. Like people are selling melanin.
Really?
What the
Look
heck?
into it. I won't go
Here you
into it
go.
right now, but it's
I
serious.
didn't
It's
know.
serious. It's serious. Melanin has a richness to it. And when we think of skin lightening, it's basically applying a product that stops melanin creation.
Mhm.
But how are you going to stop something that's naturally produced and so beautiful and rich? People go to tanning salons.
Talk
You
about
know,
it.
we called her a black woman. There's a white, I think she's Swedish, and she's going through like excessive amounts of surgeries and like melanin, what's it called? Injections
No way.
to be dark. She wants to be African. She disowned her European. Like her story is complicated, but I'm not gonna. But it's like people yearn for this.
Yeah.
Maybe they're unwell mentally because it's like you don't understand the realities of being Black. You just like the beauty of it.
Yeah.
But if people can see the beauty in it outside of our culture and our race, why can't we?
100%.
Right? So I feel like, yeah, just having these conversations, educating each other and questioning your biases, really looking into it. Maybe if you feel like, maybe I only would consider marrying someone of a certain race. That's something, just sit down and really question it. Why do I feel that way? Look within yourself and start questioning how you have also been programmed to deem darkness as undesirable. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really great answer. I think, yeah, you're right. It starts with being informed, right?
Yeah.
Forming each other, educating each other.
Mhm.
I feel like that's what young Black people need the most, is to have
Mhm.
these conversations, talk to each other, share videos and like actual educational stuff with each other about this issue. And then from there, progression happens, right? It's starting with information
Mhm.
and then applying it, right? So I think what you're doing is just phenomenal. Like, mashallah, can't say it enough.
Thank you, guys.
And I think, yeah, to that point, like, just to circle off this conversation,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's our generation that can make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Where, inshallah, I tell this guy all the time, I can't wait till I have kids because I want to
Inshallah.
instill in them the beauty of being Black
Mm-hmm.
at a very young age. Like, going back to the study that I talked about earlier, I want to tell my kids that they were born this way and they were born in perfection. And nonetheless, like, I don't want to like tell them that this is what the world wants you to look like and this is what you should look like, but this is how God created you.
Wallah.
And this is the benefits that you have, and this is the beauty that you hold. And this is, and inshallah, like, I just can't wait to have a family which I can share these belief systems to, is
Mhm.
because eventually I know you will have a family, you will have a family, you will have a
Inshallah.
family.
Inshallah.
And it's our kids that are going to be basking from the glory of being Black,
Yes.
Mhm.
we come from a place where our ancestors were told we shouldn't look this way.
Mm-hmm.
And our what is it, like, our parents, where even some of our parents, they still think this way,
Mhm.
I think it's our job to make the difference in our community so we can prove to everybody that being Black is beautiful,
Yeah.
being Black is powerful, and being Black is everything that you could ever hold.
Yep.
Very well said.
Beautiful.
Very well
It's what I
said.
do. It's what I do.
Very well
Oh,
said.
that's so good.
Comes and goes, but it's what you
100%,
do.
yeah. I got those like once a day,
Get one off a day. You're good. Nice, man. No, very, very well said. Mashallah.
Mhm.
That should be our focus for
Mhm.
just educating our youth
Mhm.
up and coming. Inshallah, that should be the focus. Like, being Black is like being rich.
100%.
You know?
Apparently,
said,
they sell it now.
They're selling.
They're harvesting it.
There's a price on melanin. I promise you.
I believe.
If we don't acknowledge our richness, like you guys said,
Mhm.
other people will, and it will not be in our benefit. Like I said, they are harvesting Black people. So acknowledge that you are valuable. Literally, you have value within your skin.
Mhm.
And understand that a lot of the tropes that media or society has pushed that does not have to be your reality. We're grown adults. We are aware. We are capable and willing to learn. So it comes down to now, are you willing to do the work within yourself and within your community? This is community, right?
Yeah.
We're sharing, we're exchanging, and now you take this information and you share that down, like you said, whether it's now when you go home with your family or down the line once you have kids, inshallah. So yeah, I feel like maybe I won't win a Nobel Prize, but I did try my best.
The one thing I know is UN, everybody in what was the program you were doing?
Development studies.
Development studies.
Yeah.
Once she's done that program,
Watch out.
all the people in the UN jobs, it's up for
Watch
you
out.
guys.
Watch out.
That's what I've been educated on today.
Watch out.
It's over.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I want to, before we wrap up, I want to speak on, we did research when we know you were coming and
Yeah.
checked on your pages and things like that.
Mhm.
I love how, like, a lot of people, Black people, unfortunately, slavery rubbed out their history and their connection to the ancestors.
Yeah.
But I think over the generations right now, a lot of people are trying to figure that out with their ancestry.com and things like that.
Mhm.
I love the fact that your whole brand is connected to your Senegalese culture
Yeah.
and YouTube,
You did say that documentary.
yeah, I love that.
Oh.
I love how it's not even, it doesn't have to be in English. We can read the caption.
Yeah.
But she was speaking on the beads, or is it?
The waist beads. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
I love, like, can you speak on just coming back here
Yeah.
and building a brand around your Senegalese identity?
For sure. I love that. I
Yeah.
appreciate you watching the documentary. That makes me so happy. It does get discouraging because it's like I put so much energy and it only has a few views, but I know that it's a process.
There's nerds out here that love going into that.
I appreciate it. And also, I'm going back to Senegal within the next 3 months. So,
Hey.
inshallah, there will be more documentaries.
Inshallah.
So, follow us.
Yeah.
NULKUK.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like I said, I didn't have a sense of identity.
Mm-hmm.
I did find that sense of identity and sense of culture when I went back. That gave me a sense of pride. And I love being Senegalese. I love it. I just love it. It just makes you so happy. And then upon coming back to Canada, not a lot of people knew about it. So I felt like it's my responsibility. This is where the passion comes in. Obviously, like I'm carrying my mom, my grandmother's legacy, but most importantly, I'm carrying my Senegalese identity. You will know about Senegal. Even if it's like 100 people, 200 people, I do not care. You're going to know about Senegal and you're going to do your research. So with that sort of responsibility that I took upon myself, I just found even more richness within our culture. So like the waist beads, for example, this is something that we bear with pride. So it's obviously for like married women, but they wear it to like, as it symbolizes femininity, if it symbolizes like African sexuality that has been demonized for so long, but within the context of marriage, of course, right? So that's something that I wanted to share with the world. So I got the privilege of interviewing a woman who has been in this business for years. Like she was explaining how her grandmother used to teach her about these, the culture of waist beads, waist beading, actual like making the waist beads within Senegalese culture. And so it's not just me selling these products, it's me also giving you the Senegalese experience, educating the people about how diverse and beautiful African culture really is. Because like you said, a lot of people lost, they haven't been granted to know their culture. When I think of African Americans, I've had people reach out to me and be like, I did a DNA test and I found out I'm like 20% Senegalese. I love this. This makes me so happy. Like I want to purchase. I've had a few people purchase or be like, are you going to plan like trips to Senegal? Would I be able to come? So it's like just getting those sort of messages. I'm like, okay, well, this is more than just selling products. It's about sharing a culture that a lot of people belong to,
For sure.
but they've lost that due to like slavery, for
Wow.
example, So that's something that I hold a lot of pride in. When I go back within a few months, I'm definitely going to do more documentation. You just gave me a really big boost.
Yeah, we need to see that.
Inshallah, because it's more than a brand. It's more than like a social movement of colorism. It's also, like I said, putting my country on the map and granting people the opportunity to immerse themselves into a new culture that they also belong to. Because
Yeah.
as Senegalese people, and inshallah, you guys are all welcome to come.
Of
We
course.
dare. We dare.
Inshallah, I'm expecting it,
We
okay?
dare. We
Give me
dare.
like
100%.
give me like 2 years, inshallah. I actually really wanted to start doing like group travel programs to bring people to Senegal, not to just enjoy the country, but to maybe, you know, do humanitarian work, etc. But yeah, it's just a question of, I don't want it to just be a brand. I want people to be the brand, if that makes sense. I want people to feel connected to Senegal. And we're a very open and welcoming society. Like one of my Vietnamese friends, she's like my good sister. She came back with us in 2018. And like, you know how like braids, that's our thing.
Yeah.
But in Senegal, it's like, this is another person from another country. You're getting braids because it's an honor for us.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So we're very open and we love to share. And sometimes it's like, well, I want to preserve this because this is my culture. It's so sincere to me. But there's beauty in expanding that and sharing it to everybody because you don't know how they'll benefit.
Sure.
And you can only see that through how people respond to my messaging. When I receive those messages of, I just found out I'm Senegalese, like, this is great, I'm so happy. That's sufficient for me to keep doing that cultural outreach. Yeah.
MashaAllah.
Just the last thing before, there was that whole era before, there's generations ago when they're fighting for against segregation, things like that.
Yeah.
Marcus Garvey was someone that, he said, let's go back to Africa. He
Yeah.
started that movement.
Yeah.
And over generations, that's something that has been stopped to a point after Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey, all these people died off.
Yeah.
And it's empowering to see like brands like yours
Yeah.
that are connected to certain culture, even though everybody doesn't have to go run back to Africa.
Mm.
They, from where they are, they can figure out who they are, what their culture is, and that's impactful. You're right here. You're with us in Toronto.
Yeah.
When you don't have to go back there to connect with who you are.
Yeah.
And that's powerful to me.
Appreciate
You
it.
know,
We're going to Senegal, guys. Get your
Inshallah.
tickets
Yeah.
ready.
No, we'll do this.
Coffee
And
Break
we'll
podcast
document
in
the trip.
Senegal?
Coffee
Oh, that's
break
gonna-
podcast.
Hey.
Yo, I'm down.
We get-
I'm so serious. I don't
Bring
know
the
if you guys
couch
are
over.
joking, but wallahi, you're
No,
welcome,
serious,
inshallah.
yeah.
Inshallah.
You just need to find a space, guys, and a table. We need a couch and mics. We're there. We're there.
Inshallah.
No, it's actually amazing. Like the only thing I've ever known about Senegal before this conversation is like football players, Sadio Mane or like Sheck West, a rapper. You know, like
Yeah.
you rarely
Yes,
ever
you're right.
see,
Mm.
right?
And
You rarely ever see like a person from Senegal talking about Senegal. It's more just like, I'm from Senegal, you know?
Mhm.
So just to see somebody from there just embracing the culture, mashallah, it's amazing to see. Makes me want to go see it now. I'm just like, wow,
Inshallah.
Yeah.
this is a country right in our continent. We gotta see it, you know?
And wallah, we're super open. They're probably going to be cracking jokes with you, trying to speak to you in English because we were colonized by the French.
Yeah, we were
unfortunately.
Italians for us.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, you understand, But the locals, they don't immerse themselves in French as much,
Mhm.
obviously. But when there's like foreigners, they will, even if they don't know a lick of English, they will speak to you in English, and it's gonna work. So
They'll figure
take
it
that.
out.
yeah, they'll figure out, and you're gonna understand
I'll
them.
take that.
They'll figure it out.
I'll take that.
Yeah,
What is the national language there?
it's Wolof.
Wolof.
Wolof. And then my mother tongue is Pulaar. So yeah, like I was talking about the ethnic groups, etc. So lineage wise, the Pulaar people are known to have come from like Syria.
Mhm.
So we're the ones who introduced like Islam within Senegal.
Oh, okay.
Like my great great grandfather, Suleiman Bal, if you guys want to look him up,
Wow.
he was one of the pioneers of introducing Islam.
Okay.
I'm always so proud to say it.
Hey, okay.
Suleiman Bal.
Or write that down.
Yeah, and so with the Olaf group, they're also known, like they love to say it. I'm like, whatever. You can claim that if you want, but they're also known to be like descendants of empires. So you guys are familiar
Oh.
with Jollof. You ever
Jollof.
hear people be like Jollof? Oh, this Jollof,
No, I haven't.
Jollof,
No.
Jollof rice.
I've heard jollof
I've
rice.
heard that, but I didn't want to be stupid.
Yeah, you
I didn't
got
want to
it.
be like, I know the right.
No, you got it. So pre-slavery, pre-colonization, we had the Jollof Empire.
Okay.
So that was mainly led by Senegalese people, but it also encompassed the majority of West Africa.
Yeah.
And then through the Jollof Empire, we had the word Olof. So they are descendants of that. And then that's where like Ghana and Nigeria claims Jollof rice, but it's like, it's our rice.
Senegalese rice,
Senegalese
guys.
is the best one. You'll try it, inshallah. It's the best one. But
You may have started a war, by the way, by saying that. Because they really take the jollof rice seriously. In Ghana,
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right.
We are the OGs. I fear none but Allah.
That camera, let them know.
Tell them.
We are the OGs. I fear none but Allah. You guys took okay, off the bat, I know the white man is trying to like divide us. I love you guys, but let's be honest. Jollof derives from Wolof. Wolof derives from Senegal. We have the best. Let's be honest.
Is there
It's all
jollof?
love, though.
Is there jollof rice in Senegal?
Yeah, so we're the OGs.
Okay.
It originates from Saint Louis, so that's one of the regions.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called Chebujin.
Chebujin.
Yeah, Chebujin. I'll send you a picture. You want to insert
Chebujin.
it? Chebujin. Yeah, so it's like rice, tomato paste base with like vegetables and fish. Often we do it with fish. We're a coastal country. We love fishing. And yeah, just our Nigerian and Ghanaian brothers and sisters took it and make it with like chicken
Right?
and meat.
I still like it. I still like it, but it's like the divide they have for that. Just one dish is crazy.
It's actually a really big
Just to
argument.
find out, it's not even from them.
Wallah, it's from us, but it's
Unreal.
okay. It's
Mashallah.
okay.
That's good. I love how connected you are with Senegal. It makes me want to, really venture out and see Somalia for myself, I've never
100%.
been, so it's like
I know,
I
but
need to-
there's turmoil there, right?
Right,
Yeah,
right.
inshallah, you guys.
but just
will be
Africa in
good.
general, it's so amazing, such an amazing place in the world, and it's so full of like amazing people and resources and cultural. Like I can go on and on, but
Mhm.
mashallah, you made me tapped in with my African side today. Thank you.
That was a goal.
Thank you.
I'm happy.
To that point, it's like before I'm gonna wrap up, but
Mhm.
we're told from a young age that Africa is not a place to be.
Third world country.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like
It's not even a country; it's a third world continent.
Yeah.
like it's like we're told that place is not where you want to be. It's broken down. The people there are less than, and to find out when we're older that it's actually a beautiful place with so much scenery and
Yeah.
so much amazing individuals, where so much culture and history comes from.
Yeah.
You start to be like, "Pfft, in what ways was I brainwashed as a kid?
Right.
You know?
So
Right.
many ways. Yeah.
But yeah, I wanted to wrap up. But
Mhm.
what I do want to say is I'm very grateful to have you on the podcast today.
Mhm.
You've been
Honored.
absolutely
Oh.
incredible. And
Amazing.
inshallah, if you want to come back, that seat is always there for you.
I will be back.
Just so you know.
I
Whenever
will be
you
back.
want.
I know you're
Please.
gonna get busy with school, but inshallah, let us know during what is it, that March week?
Reading week. Oh.
Reading week.
You
I know
remember.
what yours
Yeah,
is like.
It's in February, inshallah.
Okay,
No,
cool. Inshallah, let us know. But
100%.
I wanted to wrap up. Thanks everybody for watching another episode of the Coffee Break Podcast. Myself, Jama, my co-host,
Slim.
Help me.
and
Fatima or Fatima.
okay, cool. And yep, that's everything. Thank you so much.
Bye.